Welcome to the Near Memo, a weekly conversation about search, social, and commerce. What happened, why it matters, and the implications for local. Hello again, everybody. Welcome to the Near Memo with David, Mike, and Greg. And today, very special guest, John Jantsch. This is episode 152, and we're really excited to have John here. John is a consultant, speaker, best-selling author. The brand most associated with him is Duct Tape Marketing, but he's got a lot of books about a lot of subjects tied into digital marketing generally. And he's now doing a lot of work as a fractional CMO that he's going to be talking about. And we've got some research that he's done that also talks about this subject, which is of interest, I think, to a lot of the sort of smaller companies and agencies that are in this audience. So, John, why don't you flesh that out a little bit? Talk about the part that I didn't talk about in the work that you're doing in your background, and tell us a little bit about the fractional CMO stuff.
Well, I've actually, great. I appreciate that, Greg. So I've actually owned my own agency for 30 years now. And, I started it like a lot of people without any real plan. I just knew I could hustle work. Got big projects, little projects, big companies, little companies, and found that I most enjoyed working with small to mid-sized businesses, but they were really frustrating, had the same needs and challenges, never the same budgets or even attention spans. And so Duct Tape Marketing is actually really my attempt, at least, to create a workable solution for working with small to mid-sized businesses, where I could walk in and say, look, here's what I'm going to do. Here's what you're going to do. Here are the results we hope to get. And by the way, here's what it costs. I found out pretty quickly that was actually addressing a huge frustration in the market. It's hard and getting harder to buy marketing services as a small to mid-sized business. So, that business really took off and led to my first book, which was the same title, Duct Tape Marketing. And that led actually to other agencies saying, yeah, we want to work with small businesses too. But you seem to have cracked the code on that. And so now, for the last 15 years or so, we've been licensing our methodology to agencies and consultants. And as you mentioned, the last 5 years or so, we have really leaned into the positioning of a fractional CMO. I think for a lot of reasons, fractional everything has become at least understood. Still blaming some things on the pandemic. I think there are a lot of folks that got caught, without a strategy, and that's been our approach all along: strategy before tactics. And so I think it really opened the door for this idea of companies going, you know what, whatever you call it, fractional CMO, marketing director, whatever you call it, we need that. So that is what we deliver now to really agencies around the world.
Why don't you define that a little bit? Because I think that term, everybody who's on LinkedIn sees fractional this, fractional that, as you mentioned. Right. But what does that really mean as a practical matter? Just give us a little bit on that.
And define small business in that context as well, in other words.
Yeah, okay, great. So the fractional part is, part-time, I guess, is probably the easiest way. It's like I'm going to hire a fraction of, what a person sitting in a seat might cost me. So, salary.com recent survey of CMOs, salary is anywhere from $275 to $360, and then, all the benefits and things beyond that. So it's a fraction of that, just straight from a cost standpoint. Chief marketing officer, again, I think for a lot of organizations, that's the person that is the advocate for marketing inside the organization, is the advocate for the customer inside the organization, is the advocate for data, driven decisions. And those are all things that marketing agencies are often not delivering on, or not asked to deliver on. So it's certainly from a small to mid-sized business. And then to Mike's point, to me, that's probably anything under $30 million. Frankly, that because I think you've probably got to exceed that in revenue for a full-time CMO hire to even make sense as a percentage of revenue, as a percentage of marketing budget. So for us, that's kind of where we play, is anything under about that number.
And is there sort of a revenue threshold before which you wouldn't even consider something like this? Is there a range? You have to hit X amount before this makes any sense?
It's probably pretty low. I mean, somebody that's got growth goals and can invest, I would say probably once you cross over, and this has been my experience, any business that crosses over the $1 million point, they start having new problems, and that, a lot of that has to do with the founder was good at selling whatever they sold to get them to that point, but there really aren't any systems and processes in place to really profitably grow from that point. So, that's definitely on the low end, but it's certainly feasible. We've seen, businesses that do have the ability to maybe 2-3x where they are today that take a look at this as a way to get them there.
It's interesting that you say that agencies don't deliver these sort of strategic services. I've seen a lot of small business surveys, and invariably the small business respondents want more from their agencies than what they're getting. They want, you know, help with understanding the customer. They want help with building the brand. They want help with advice and sort of strategy that the agencies that are primarily doing marketing execution don't provide. I mean, so they would like that from their agencies, but they don't seem to be getting it for whatever reason. The agencies aren't delivering those services for the most part.
Well, and I think part of it too, if I'm going to defend the agencies a little bit, is there's a lot of business, there's a large chunk of businesses I just described that think strategy is a waste, or that why should we have to pay for that, or I'm impatient, I just need leads. So there's a lot of pressure, I think, on agencies to make the phone ring. If people still do that, I'm not sure if that's even applicable anymore. But I think strategy is something. Strategy is an investment. And so, by leading with strategy as opposed to waiting for the client to ask for it, I think you have a better chance of creating the right relationship with the right customer.
Well, bring up go ahead.
Yeah, can I just ask? So, do you see more? Have you seen an increase in the number of small and medium-sized businesses as you define them? Let's say between $1 and $30 million. Have you seen an increase in the demand for strategy over the last couple of years, or is this positioning sort of trying to thread the needle of like, hey, here's how we can position ourselves as a more strategic advisor and justify higher retainers or whatever that is, or is it really becoming easier and easier to sell these strategic services because there is a demand as the market fragments and things change more quickly and all of that?
Yeah, I think the simple answer is both. We've certainly seen people asking for strategy that before we had to convince them what it even was. So we've definitely seen an uptick in that. But I've also seen that, as there's a lot of pressure on pricing of tactics, I've also seen a lot of agencies that are saying, hey, this is a way to differentiate what we offer. There are people that want more strategy now. They're willing to pay for it. And when you tell somebody I'm a digital marketing agency, there's a whole lot of perception about what that is. Whereas the idea of we offer a fractional CMO service, there's at least for the moment a clear differentiator of what the expectation might be if I'm going to work with you.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is a really interesting discussion because from the small business surveys that I've participated in, the consistent business challenge that's always at the top or very near the top of the list is customer acquisition, right? It's
Sure.
The lead gen that you talked about. It's new customers. It's not retention. And some folks are talking about brand building and have a long-term perspective, but for the most part, it's sort of short-term thinking. We need quarterly leads. We need, and within organizations, I was part of a business recently, Uberall, which I've talked about very openly, a German company where there was an enormous pressure on the marketing team to deliver leads, marketing qualified leads. And that was the priority rather than sort of big picture. It may have changed, but when I was there, that was a huge priority. And so this was an enterprise, and they were dealing with enterprise clients. And so it seems to be sort of top to bottom in the market. There's this lead based focus. even though people pay lip service to brand building and strategy, I think there's, people are really focused on getting leads in the door, getting new customers in the door.
And one comment and one question. My comment is digital marketing agency is one thing. SEO is even lower on that totem pole of perceived quality. But the question is, John, you mentioned $1 million as a point where a lot of small businesses recognize the need, if not the knowledge about what it would take to solve it. Do you see other sort of typical breakpoints at 5, 10, 20 million?
Oh, yeah.
On this road to 30?
Yeah, you just mentioned them. 5, 10 are big breakpoints, and a lot of it comes down to, now we've got people involved, and I think that especially a lot of business owners. I mean, in many cases, entrepreneurs have never managed a team before, and that becomes a big part of their challenge, and it relates to marketing, of course, because they need to start actually thinking leadership hires. They need to you've got marketing, sales, and service or customer success as probably separate divisions, almost, when you start getting that $10 million range. And those are some of the challenges that are, I think every problem's a marketing problem, but you could also quantify them or qualify them as process and system problems.
Thanks for joining David, Mike, and Greg. To stay on top of the latest developments in local, subscribe to our newsletter at nearmedia.co. We'll see you next week.